Hope everybody is doing well on this Tuesday afternoon. It is time for the World Edition. And of course, we've got some amazing folks that are with us, including our special guests that'll be coming on very shortly. And all along those lines, like I said, there are a number of things that are happening around the world. And of course, we'll talk about those. But of course, we also want to get to what is going on in our with our guests and all along those lines. So in a little bit, we'll get to the things that are happening in the world, including Xi Jinping's foreign minister being ousted after a month-long unexplained absence from public view, and the recent deadly heat wave fueled by climate change. And of course, anger grows in the Ukraine port city of Odessa after the Russian bombardment hits the beloved historic sites. And of course, folks are still looking at the Carly Russell news as Hoover police are mulling charges after attorney Emery Anthony admits that the whole abduction was a lie, and all in that space. So we'll definitely get to some of those conversations as well as other things that are happening in the world and around the world in that space. But I'm going to bring in my special guest for today, and then we'll have a conversation about some of the things that he's involved in, and definitely looking forward to that. And of course, we've got other folks that'll be joining that are part of our regular panel as well. So we'll get to them after a while. But right now, we're going to hear from Dr. Sadati, and it is Kevin Sadati. So glad to have you here with us. And all along those lines, I know that we've had a couple of other folks that are associated with Ms. Sherry Carr, the PR lady out of California, and definitely looking forward to our conversation and all in that kind of way. So glad to have you here. One of the things that I was going to say is that it looks like, we were in the middle of the pandemic. A lot of folks weren't going to the hospitals except for dealing with the pandemic itself and all along those lines. But now we seem to be getting out of that pandemic mode. And I guess that there is a growing rise in cosmetic surgery. So I'd love to hear your thoughts around that. And why is that? Why are we seeing more people going for cosmetic surgery? Hopefully I don't need any. I don't think I have any severe blemishes that need to be corrected, but I also know that sometimes cost can be a factor as well. And we may get to some of that conversation also, but definitely want to hear about the rise in cosmetic surgery and who these days are getting these improvements, whether it's more women or more men that are doing it. So definitely would love to hear some of your thoughts and all in that space. And then we'll get to some other conversation as well. So how are you doing? And if you'll just tell us a little bit about yourself and maybe answer those couple of questions.
Good day to all of you. Thank you, Mark, for having me on your show. And thank you for introduction. Dr. Kevin Sadati, facial plastic surgeon, practicing in Newport Beach, California for past 17 years. I specialize in facial rejuvenation, especially rejuvenating the face with different techniques that I am teaching and also have been practicing for over 17 years. During this process, let's start with your question, starting with the pandemic, and I'm very happy that chaos is over. All of us have gone through a scary time in our life. Some individuals lost their members of their family, loved one, and some people lost their businesses due to the pandemic, and some of them have not even recovered yet. But world has gone through some certain chaos, and we're coming out of it, and I'm very happy for that. as far as cosmetic surgery goes, uh, there was a trend in cosmetic surgery in terms of rise of facial rejuvenation, which I believe exacerbated by social media before even pandemic started. It people taking selfies, right, in social media apps such as Snapchat, Instagram, and so on, and also the cell phones that they take selfies, and also the new apps that modify the facial features to the different version of yourself gave people a different perspective of how they can look otherwise, and seeded some sort of perception that they may be able to improve their facial features, and a lot of inquiries. Obviously, some of them were uh, not realistic, uh, and people trying to change facial features. So gave a lot of uh, false hope to some individuals. But as a surgeon, mine is mostly concentrated on facial rejuvenation and bringing the individual's face to a younger version of themselves rather than changing their face. Although there are some surgeons who do that kind of surgery or uh, do other procedures to modify facial features even for younger individuals that do not have any deformity or any issues to give them a look that they want. So that's not my style.
Yep, that
So
makes a lot of sense and everything. One thing that I'm going to ask really quickly is I also understand you have a artist background, and all along those lines. So at one time you were going to be a painter or a sculptor. So I don't know that you were always going to be a doctor, but it does look like you were raised in a large family. I think there were 9 children in that family. So I was wondering what interrupted that study and what got you into the field of cosmetic surgery.
So let's go back. I was born in Iran, but I'm made in America. So uh, during 60s, I was born in a family. I was the 8th kid of 9 kids in Iran, in a middle class family. And again, for me, it was the usual things, going to school. Although my parents, my mom was very insistent on education, and I think they put a lot of effort on personally me and my brother, the last kid, to have good education. So I was very good at math and science. Doing that was my talent, making stuff, building, and I was repairing at the age of 12 to 14. I was repairing people's TVs and refrigerator. I love that kind of. So my focus was mostly engineering and building things out. So I grew up. It was modest, very modest family, and my parents were not educated at all. Barely finished high school. My dad, and they were working. They had their own business. My mom was house taking care of us. Stay-at-home mom, obviously, having kids. I got educated. Went to high school, but 2 years, a year of high school in 1978. It was a revolution in Iran that changed everybody's life forever, and it like a pandemic that happens, and like a virus happened. Instead of doing something good, something I think opposite happened to our country. And I was a teenager going to high school, and my last 2 years of high school was basically chaos, school closure, rioting. You're young kid, you're trying to figure out what direction you want to go. You're left, right, center, and I tried all of it and tried to figure out, okay, where do I fit? And it was in the middle of chaos as a teenager that you're trying to figure out who you are, and then you put another volcano on top of that, and makes your life much more chaotic, and to figure out, okay, where do I fit in the society? Where do I want to go with my life during this time? So a lot of chaos happened. So school closure and basically the education was like off and on. And so I graduated in 1980, and just a year after, and revolution happened in 1979, and then I got graduated in 1980, the year after, and the war started. Right before I was just like, okay, now we're just going to school. I'm going to go to college and find my path through education. But now the universities were shut down. Universities, everything was in chaos. So, and the war started, and I'm like, okay, what I'm going to do? And in Iran, military service is mandatory. If you get drafted, regardless, there's war, peace. Even now, even you finish high school or you go to university, after your university, have to do 2 years of service. Like a lot of countries do have it. Like Israel has it. A lot of other countries, it's a mandatory situation. So the war started, and I'm like, oh, hopefully this is gonna end pretty soon. So a year, I waited around, and I'm like, okay, there's no universities, there's nothing else I can do. Just wait for a year. Maybe everything calms down so I can go back to my education. At that time, it continued, and it was no end to the fight. And I got drafted. They literally came to our house and said, you know, he's eligible and he needs to enroll in military service. And I said, okay, maybe I just go do something, end up in office work or do something else. And because military is not all frontline.
Right.
Sure enough, I got drafted, got 3 months of military training in the beginning. They give everybody, and then they designated me to go to become a medic. I'm like, I don't know anything about medicine. What? I should be in engineering or, you know, repair system, mechanic or something like that. No, you're gonna go become a medic. Okay, I had no choice. So they put me in 3 months of training in a little with 120 other individuals. I was drafted to become a Marine. I was in the Marine, and in that training, there were 100 other individuals that getting trained for being a medic. And after 3 months, they said, okay, pack, because my unit was already up front in the front line. So you're gonna go to the front line, you're gonna report to your commander there, and they're gonna tell you what to do. Okay. I went from one side of Iran, which is Tehran. I was born in Tehran, and I had to take a train to go south of Iran to the border of Iraq, where the war was going on. And then from there, from the train, I got a little Jeep. They had, you know, taking soldiers back and forth from the city to the front. I got there first time. I'm going to the desert area where I live. Tehran is like, let's say, Colorado or Utah. It's very four season, hot, and it has snow, it rain, all kinds of seasons. And suddenly, in the middle of summer, I ended up in the middle of like desert, like 120 degrees temperature. I'm like, holy moly, this is like a different area I'd never been to. So passed through all the deserty stuff with the Jeep. They dropped me off to the front line, and they said, okay, this little place is yours, and this is the ambulance, and this is the guy, the driver, and you're in charge of taking the wounded soldiers from the front line to 20 miles back where the hospital is. I'm like, okay. I mean, 3 months of training, I barely knew how to put a Band-Aid on somebody. Literally, I had no idea. So, and then started just getting acclimated with knowing people, who's who. They were all like bunkers. We have small bunkers. I don't know, how it works. They dig the ground because of the bombing. So, and then they put traverse, the one that the wood from railroad on top of the little hole, and they put sandbag on top. So kind of you're under, and your height is like barely can walk in there, like not walking, crawling in there. It's like a little hole. So you live in such a confined and small area, and hot, no air conditioner. Oh my Lord, it was rough. So I got into the front line, and where I started seeing soldiers getting injured and getting called in the middle of bombing where everybody is sheltering. I had to get in an ambulance with the driver, force him, said, we got to go pick up this guy. And severe wounds that, level 1 trauma. And I'm like, what the heck I'm supposed to do with it? Like the leg is off, the hands is bleeding, tourniquet, and I was like not prepared for any of those. So I said, I got to do something. I can't be just sitting watching people like this. So I picked up a lot of books. During my first time off, I had after a month and a half to let you go for a week. So I went home, picked up some books, medical books and trauma books, and trying to figure out. And I went to different hospitals because the supplies were limited. I mean, there was sanction on Iran, and there was just barely had nothing. And I would go ask members of families if they can donate money so we can buy some supplies and bandages, and go to the area in my hometown, and I got a bunch of supplies for what I needed it, and books, and got back there. I read and studied, and I had a lot of friends that I got to know, and I said, I say to these people, if something happened to them, I need to take care of it. So during this time, it was a tough time. I was just 18, 19 at that time, and I truly was an eye-opener. So I had to emotionally stabilize myself to deal with the calamity of how much a person can take. People who you get to know, you start knowing, because I was taking care of like 150 people, and you start knowing them, and suddenly you hear that you have to go pick them pieces off and take them back, and it was a lot for a young man that had no experience, normal life, and my point was in my head, okay, I'm here to serve these people. I'm just going to do whatever it takes. At least I'm not involved in bombing or killing somebody. I'm helping people. So whatever I can do, I'm going to do. And this is, I think, is part of things that I have to deal with. That's how I rationalize it. Well, instead of thinking, oh my God, this is horrible, I'm going to leave and go home. I'm like, okay, this is what I need to do. I'm going to do my best, and I'm hoping that I'll be able to do something good here.
Hey, Dr. Sadati, along those same lines, I was just wondering, and I'm going to bring in some of the other panelists as well, how much of that experience has influenced some of the work that you're doing now? Because I know that part of what you do is you do some pro bono work, I think in Mexico and other countries as well. So how much of that war experience that you had back in the 80s has influenced what you are even doing now? Because I'm thinking some of these areas are also very either war torn or going through drug communities or going through a number of other things. So how much does that influence your choice to do some of this pro bono work that you do as well?
Well, it gives you humility in your mind that, not everybody is rich and famous to have facial cosmetic done. So every year I will go to different countries, third world countries, from Mexico to Guatemala, Vietnam, and other countries to serve individuals who have facial deformities and help kids with cleft palates, or they have a lot of other issues, and even simple laceration in their face that cause infection and or neck abscess due to tooth infection. I mean, some of them are not super complicated, but become life-threatening. So I will go to those countries to help individuals to, have some sort of medical care as much as I can. And that's one of my passion, to serve individuals in third world countries.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Along those same lines, I know that after the war, the Iran-Iraq war, you also went to Germany and you didn't have that much money in your pocket. So how did that experience influence some of what you're doing as well? Because I think I understand you had maybe $700 in your pocket, if that, and everything. And then you went to Germany, and I guess that's where you did some of your training as well before coming here to America. So how was that experience also?
So after the war is over, I came out in one week. The only thing I was injured, my hearing. I lost both my hearing very profoundly, about 70% of high frequency due to explosion near me. One near-death experience because I was in my bunker, a bomb fell out on the bunker, and it was so loud. It collapsed on me and people got me out, but I couldn't hear for 2-3 days. It was literally silent, and eventually came back, but a good chunk of my hearing has diminished. I'm in a restaurant or crowded place, I can't hear anything. So after that, so otherwise physically I was not injured. I didn't lose eyes or hands or legs. Although I got a couple shrapnel to my shoulders in the back I got, but those were no big deal. So after you finish your military service in Iran, then you're allowed to have your passport, because they don't give you a passport if you don't finish that service. You can't even have driver's license. So I got my driver's license, I got my ID card, and I got my passport, and I went to Germany embassy and I said, I want to go to Germany and study. And I was lucky, they gave me a visa because, again, it was overwhelming number of people wanted to leave the country. It was war and chaos and everyone wanted to leave, especially younger people. And I got lucky, they allowed me to go to Germany and only had $700 in my pocket. And my dad had a business and he goes, oh, now you should come and run my business. He had a dairy product. He was a farmer. He grew up as a farmer, and when he came to Tehran, he had a dairy product distribution in Tehran. And I'm like, oh, that's not my business. That's your business. I don't want to do what you do, and I have other missions in my life. Especially when I went to war, just give me a different perspective of I want to pursue something positive in my life. So, and that was education that I wanted to pursue and maybe become a physician. I didn't know what it takes because the only training I had was as a medic, but I never had formal training. I never studied. I was meant to be engineer. Everything I took was math, science. So I went to Germany, stayed with a relative for during 3 months, 4 months period I was in Germany. Again, there were numbers, and I stayed there, started going to school learning the language. I started working there, but I didn't get the feeling that this is going to be a country that I will call home, and there is a place that I belong, because the society, German, is very cool in terms of interaction with themselves, let alone with a foreign person coming there. Just like it's very, where I go up, everybody is like friendly and people are more interactive. German people are very structured and they're not as welcoming. They're great people. They're amazing, but that's their culture. There's nothing wrong. Some people love it. I have a younger brother who stayed in Germany. He's still in Germany and got married there. My older brother was in Germany. He got married there and moved to Paris. I said, you know what? I want to try it. I was there, but I said, After 3-4 months, I said, this is not where I want to be. And I always had a dream of coming to America because I knew it's a country that will give you the opportunity. Opportunities are there, but you have to see it, take advantage of it, and run with it. And it's a climbing a mountain, but they allow you to climb that mountain. They put a barrier in front of you. So yeah, this is a mountain, but only selected people can go to the top. So
what is it about America that drew you to the country? Like I said, even on this show, we've talked about America and its draw from some of the people from other parts of the world. So what as a young man, was it about America that really intrigued you and really made you want to come here? Because I know earlier you said that you were made in Iran, but definitely have American roots, American strong ties and everything.
Born in Iran, but made in America. So what made me, you're exposed to TV, you're exposed to media, you see different faces on the success in the United States. They're not all ubiquitous. They're not all German. They're not all, let's say, white or one color. Is everybody. I've seen people who were obviously during past, it was more restriction, but even during that time, I saw some of my family members who came to the United States way in 60s and 70s were able to make it to the top. So I knew it's better, it's less glass ceiling in the United States rather than Europe. Is you see the top, but when you want to go up, you hit the glass ceiling and you don't know why you're not going anywhere. But here, truly, United States is an amazing country. It's not flawless. We all know nobody's perfect. We're not perfect. This country has some issues in the past with the past, but again, it's a country that provides the best opportunity for people who are willing to put the work into and to do what it takes to achieve their dream. And it provides you to realize your dream. And that's true American dream. In other countries, that is not possible. This country gives you the green light to put your heart and soul in something, and you will get there. No matter what your color of skin is, no matter what language. I spoke no English when I came to the United States. No English. Like barely I could say hi. When I came to the airport, I got a student visa to go to Hayward State University in California. I couldn't say Hayward. I was telling the gentleman who was at the airport interviewing me, Harvard. He goes, no, you're not going to Harvard. You're going to Hayward. I'm like, Harvard. He goes, no, Hayward. So I didn't spoke anything. I just knew hi, hello, how are you? Just very basic. And that's what I mean. I came here and I had a lot of barriers with the language. and also hearing was the issue. Therefore, I came here, went to a relative's house, stayed with him for a month and a half or two, and he was a restaurant owner. And literally the next day, he took me to a restaurant, and they were building a new restaurant. I was doing construction, helping the construction people to clean up and do stuff. So that was my job. And literally in the middle of noon, everybody was like taking lunch break. I fell asleep and I fell on the floor dirt. He said, "What's wrong with this guy?" I had jet lag. I had no idea what jet lag means.
Wow.
I was sitting after lunch. I passed out. They thought I'm on drug or there's something seriously wrong with me. They couldn't wake me up.
And it was just a
So
simple case of jet lag and everything. I'm going to bring in Jatovia and Lee Newton Rhodes, and I might bring in a few others than Debbie Peterson and all along those lines. I was just curious, really quick, as I'm bringing in the other folks, including the founder of the network, Nick Palveda, and all in that space. One of the things I was curious about is your art background, because you also have an art background. I know Jatovia is into the arts as well as being into esports and all along those lines. So tell me about the art background and how that played into the cosmetic surgery as well. And I'm sure folks have been listening and may have some other questions for you also. But I do know that sounds like the art background of being a sculptor as well as a artist has played into your career as well.
So after I started going through my education process here, also I was very interested in art, and although I had to do that in Iran, but it was during the chaos and revolution, so I didn't get a chance to do a formal education. So when I got here, after finishing undergraduate, because again, I was working at night, going to school during the day. There was no time for any extracurricular activity I was doing. I got a scholarship to go to University of California, Berkeley, and studying molecular cell biology and Near Eastern studies. So I was full schedule. On top of that, I was working at night to support myself. So there's no time for art or anything. But after medical school, I went to Chicago for medical school. Again, that's very intense work, and there's no time for anything else. So I put everything back burner. However, when I went to Philadelphia to do my residency program in head and neck surgery, facial plastic surgery, I found like 2 hours of the evening that I can dedicate to pursue my interest in art and formally get educated. So I started taking classes in Philadelphia School of Art and attending classes and learning formally how to paint and sculpt, and that was always my interest. So it was a parallel between my facial plastic and head and neck surgery and getting into more in depth into art and learn human anatomy on one side, and also how you can apply it to canvas or let's say clay.
Well, definitely. Jatovia, we might have some questions. One of the things I had asked earlier, but I didn't get a true idea of the answer and everything is, are we seeing a lot of folks that are getting, you mentioned kind of the social media, but are trying to get plastic surgery, and what are some of the things that you ask in order to determine whether a person should have plastic surgery, and are we seeing more men or women getting it? Because I'm wondering about that, and sometimes I wonder about the cost factor as well, but I'd love to hear your thoughts, because I know there are some people that might need it but can't necessarily afford it.
Well, again, I mentioned earlier, social media played a huge role, and then during the pandemic, the Zoom meeting like this and other platforms made people to look at themselves in the camera constantly. And that during the pandemic, right after like July and August, our business part of cosmetic facial procedure for people who want to do a facial rejuvenation, it just skyrocketed. And that was due to the fact that people see themselves how it is, because sometimes when we look at the mirror lies actually, but the photos and videos, you can actually see yourself and criticize yourself. Because we're used to mirror. Everything you look at the mirror is the same person. So your mind says, oh, this is the same person who was like this 10 years ago. So that's how we look at yourself. But when you look at the picture, selfie, or video, people start looking, oh, okay, what is going on in my neck? What's going on in my back? And that created a huge rise post-pandemic or during pandemic, like 2021 was huge surge. And it was an economic situation too. People were not going to parties. There was no wedding. There was no traveling. People didn't spend their money on clothing. So some people were working from home and they had excess amount of money. They could work remotely from home. So even they work remotely, they can recover while they're doing work on their computers. So it was a huge rise during that time. But things are settling down. That huge rush, let's say, is kind of calming down. It's normalizing to pandemic. But again, there's a huge rise for younger individuals that come up with the unusual expectations due to the filters that are on social media, and that's becoming a problem for society, putting those filters. And well, aging process is something that happens. A lot of us, I mean, I'm in my 60s, in my head, I'm living in my 30s, and I feel that I'm physically in my 30s or early 40s, but I'm 60. So once you start seeing a picture or selfie that you see some sort of aging process and you get a reality check, you know, some people want to look a little refreshed to match the inside and outside. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. It's actually a self-improvement. However, for young individuals that are, you know, it's not an aging process, but they use the filters and they want to look different, I think that creates a problem. And I don't deal with those kind of situations.
It makes a lot of sense. I don't think Debbie needs any plastic surgery at all. She's a beauty and all along those lines. And I've always thought that about her when she's joined the show and everything. But Debbie, you're there in California where Dr. Sadati is as well. So you've heard some of the conversation. I don't know if you have any thoughts or questions about the whole notion of plastic surgery. And maybe you've had some folks that have done or been involved in that. But like I said, I definitely am an admirer of yours. But I'd love to hear your thoughts around the conversation so far. And Jacoby may want to jump in as well.
Well, thank you, Mark. Those are kind words, and I'm fortunate the camera is kind, and there are little things you can do to tweak it as well. But I certainly have the experience that the doctor is talking about of looking in the mirror, and sometimes I still feel 17, but I sure don't look 17. So I get it.
You already look 35, Debbie, so it's fine.
Oh, that's very sweet of you. Thank you, Shaquille. You guys are being really nice today. And the thing that I was really intrigued by your story, but the thing that I liked most of all that was good for me to hear as an American was that you felt like there was still opportunity here, that this was the place where you would have the most opportunity, and that this was one of the few places where you really could achieve what you wanted to achieve. And that's really heartening. That's really good to hear about the country. So thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, and this is one
If I can add to that, Debbie, as well, when people complain about bureaucracy, they often complain about California. But Dr. Sadati, made a new life for him right there in California, which is the majority of my family that have immigrated to the United States all live in California. So I know California gets a bit of a bad rap often, including from me. But it does say a lot about the opportunities that America provides and that California provides.
Well, interestingly enough, all the studies on happiness, California always comes up pretty high on as people being happy. And of course, it's hard not to be happy when you have beautiful weather and beautiful scenery, and that we have big cities, but we have a huge amount of wilderness out there as well.
Yes, I'm very active. I'm a road biker, mountain biker. I do on weekends right out there doing exercises. I love it. I go to the mountains, I mountain bike, and I'm a snowboarder. Go to Tahoe or Mammoth, and I enjoy the nature. And one thing about California, as we all know, it's like almost the fifth largest economy in the world, and I'm lucky to be here, not in the United States, which is, I would say, is a dreamland, but I am in the heart of the dreamland. And there's a dreamland and there's a heart of it, and that's California, where everything happens. California is truly the center of the United States, one of the centers, New York and California, but everything, if you think Google, Yahoo, Tesla, you name it, all the things is happening that change the world happened in California, and it continues to be front and center of evolutionizing the world, the things that happens. And I'm extremely happy and extremely lucky to be in California, especially by the coastline where I live. And this is like, you can't beat it. And I'm extremely lucky.
Sounds like it. Hey, Dr. Sadati, one of the things I had alluded to earlier is what are some of the questions that you ask in order to make sure that the person actually needs the cosmetic surgery? Because like you said, sometimes it is a vanity thing, and sometimes people may be asking for it even though they don't really need it. Now, we know a lot of times it is very necessary because of fires and other calamities where you have to do it, but then it can also be a vanity project and all along those lines. And I'm not knocking people having their vanities. I mean, we all have them to some degree or another, but are there any particular questions that you ask in order to make sure that the surgery is actually something that is really necessary?
So over the time, my main concentration is because facial rejuvenation is a form of art. So I gravitated towards art and surgery. I did reconstructive surgery, which is very rewarding. But again, at the same time, I wanted to have some sort of flair of art into my life. Obviously, when you go to medicine, you're so busy to build your own practice and your skills, and you want to do something that you truly enjoy. Every day going to work and like working with a new piece of clay, or canvas. So I chose to concentrate on facial rejuvenation, which is more artistic form of facial plastic surgery. How I choose people, I just have a long conversation. Like each patient, I spend an hour of talking why they're in my office. What are the reasons that they're doing it? Are they doing it for themselves to improve self-improvement? They're healthy individuals. That they want to improve their aging process. Inside, they feel they're like in their 40s and 30s, but they're actually in their 30s. They have genetic issues. They have exposure to sun and some other stuff that cause some laxity of facial features that they would like to improve because they exercise, they're in good shape. So I go through a process of selecting individuals that are good candidates for facial rejuvenation. Besides the work that I do for charities, which are obvious needs that they have, but workhorse of my job is facial rejuvenation, which is artistic and is part of things that I enjoy to do. And that's during the conversation with individuals, I figure out if they're doing it for something for themselves, self-improvement without being influenced by other factors, and realistic expectation. I examine them, I show them in the mirror how they're going to look like afterward to make sure I show them in the mirror what they're going to look like with the laxity gone, or like a puffiness on their eyes, or whatsoever, so they understand we're not doing magic here, we're doing facial rejuvenation, we're taking the clock back for the same individual, creating a youthful version of them, not a different version.
Well,
Do
I
you do
understand
much in the revision and corrective space? There's been a famous show that's called Botched, where they talk about when people have gone to perhaps less qualified plastic surgeons and something's gone wrong. Do you do much in that space? Do you work much with people who have had something gone wrong, or have perhaps had a filler that has been injected into them and now it's causing problems and they can't get the filler out? Is that something that you have had much exposure to?
Yes, that's a part of a description of my job. It's not all fresh clay that I have to work. Sometimes you work with a broken piece of art that you have to fix. So it's a part of my job to help the individuals that they confronted unfortunate situation that have gone to other surgeons. Either the healing process wasn't right or the surgeon wasn't skilled. You can't always complain. I mean, what we do, we are surgeons, we're not God, we're not, things are not perfect. There are individuals that they have healing issues. There's some unfortunate thing happens, infection, fluid collection that delays the healing process or make the healing process go the wrong way. It's not like you can be the best surgeon in the world, but complication happens. That's what they call surgery.
Yeah, no doubt. Along those same lines, I know that you have come up with your innovative procedure. So can you share a little bit about that? Because I understand you've come up with something that is innovative in the field and everything.
Well,
Steve Rouse backstage.
Yeah.
Yes. So during the process, as I mentioned, I started my practice. I joined a group of plastic surgeons at high volume of facelifting and facial rejuvenation. And they were using some sort of traditional mini facelift, but it was not effective. And it was not something that I wanted to pursue. So I went back to Cadaver Lab. I studied more and came up with a technique that can perform facial rejuvenation under local anesthesia and oral sedation, where the company was focusing on. So I started modifying their technique because I didn't like the results were suboptimal, let's say. And I went back to Cadaver Lab, studied more, and figure out how I can do what I need to do under local anesthesia and oral sedation to get the best result I can. So I came up with a technique. I published it. And again, more and more time passed on, and I republished a new version of it that I go around the country and world, teach in seminars, teach other surgeons, people come to my practice and observe to learn. And now I'm focusing on the deep plane face and neck lifting, which is more of going deeper structure and creating a facial rejuvenation to the next level and the next generation of facial rejuvenation.
Sounds amazing.
You
And
mentioned
everything. I'm
before
going to turn it
about
over to Jatovia and others that have questions. But Dr. Sadati, can you turn me into Blair Underwood and Jatovia into Denzel Washington? That's the question and everything, is whether you could give us that magic and all along those lines. Jatovia, I was going to have you be Denzel, if that's okay with you.
Why not me? Lee, you get to be
Tom Cruise.
I want Denzel. Ryan Gosling. That's who you get to be. Thanks. I'll be Denzel.
So, Kevin, you talked before about dentistry, about dealing with tooth infections and things like that. I'm just curious. I actually have a mild underbite, and after searching the world for a dentist that could fix that, the dentist that I've been seeing is in Santa Monica. Haven't been able to get back there because of COVID. But is dentistry something that you incorporate into your facelift procedures and your facial rejuvenation procedures?
Yes, I would recommend it to them. So there are individuals that they come to me and I do facial rejuvenation. They look great, but if their teeth are not, this is first thing people look at your mouth and eyes when you're communicating with someone. That's how people look at you. They look at your eyes and teeth and where your lips move. I'm a lip reader, so I look at people's lips all the time. So if there's anything I see, I just gently recommend them. Now, another part of your rejuvenation or improvement, if you will, is to just pick that broken tooth or straighten it or do something about it. But it's not something I do.
Gotcha. Toby, any questions?
Yeah, actually, I had two. One, I guess, dealing in a similar note with the facial rejuvenation and the procedures that you go through. Are you dealing with cleft lips and that whole? Because I know here in Durham we have a whole wing of Duke that is dedicated to dealing with children and adults with cleft lips and the procedures to fix that cleft lip. Also, the other question I had was more on a lighter note, where I know you discussed earlier about your love of art and how what you do is art, which is true, and how your love of art, I guess, led you to doing what you're doing now. In your opinion, how can we take not only the love of art, because that also deals in gaming, the love that somebody has for art to empower kids to jump into fields such as plastic surgery or such as even law, which can be considered art if you think about writing?
Yeah. So there's two questions to this, two part in this question. Yes, I was trained to do cleft palate and do other surgeries that I do on a pro bono cases, but my practice is not solely focused on that. I do that on the side on my time that I go to mission. Well, as far as art and impact, yes, I chose a career. I could have gone. I knew. Well, I don't know. You guys listen. I was wanted to be an engineer all my life, and I was drawn to be a physician because of the war. I was a medic, and I ended up to become somebody who is interested and became interested in medicine, and also the art that I always loved to be a part. So I wanted to combine these two together. In my life, I wanted to run a parallel thing in my life. Obviously, I find my path in life. You know, and this country I was talking about, the United States, it just gives you the opportunity to carve out your own path, not just to follow something blindly and end up where you want to be without knowing where you're going. If you have a vision and you want to be doing something special for yourself, you can carve it out. So I love art. I met my wife, who was a scientist at NIH, National Institute of Health in Washington, D.C. We met through art. We met through museums and talking about art. So it's been a part of my life. She paints, I paint. We have like a little dedicated area in our house that we do our art despite having kids and taking care of life and business and everything. So saying that, I chose to do more facial rejuvenation because it's truly artistic and dealing with creating a beauty of that individual and keeping that individual facial features intact, but making a youthful version of themselves without changing it. That's art. So that's why I focus on facial rejuvenation and artistic. Yeah, art is not one version. You can be artistic and also be a writer. You can be artistic and be engineer and design beautiful Tesla. You can be artist and doing landscaping design. It just is a supplement or complement your life and make your life enjoy of things that you do. So yeah, you can be an artist and doing whatever you want to do.
Dr. Sadati, along those same lines, I know we're winding down very shortly in terms of time and everything. One of the things and one of the complaints people have about those that are in the medicine and law is the giving back aspect. So, and it sounds like you're doing a lot of that work, but how important do you think it is for people in the professional fields to have some sense of give back to the community that they come from, whatever that give back is and everything? Because it does seem like you are carving out some time to do some pro bono work with people in the third world countries that can't necessarily afford your work or even afford to travel to the United States.
Well, it is. Well, you can't force everybody to do what I do or other surgeons do. It's just a part of your humility and your grounding you down. So anytime I do this kind of mission and doing such, it brings me up a level that to the lowest level, and you become a very humble person, and you see how people live in other part of world and lack of opportunities, lack of medical care, that some kids, they have to live through some deformities in their facial features because lack of funding, or lack of medication, medicine, or supplies. And it brings me back to when I was in the war on the front line, and I was struggling to survive. And that gives me more strength in my head to enjoy my life, because life is short, and I think I have 20 useful summers in my life, and I try to enjoy each summer of it. And that gives me some sort of perspective to enjoy what I do, enjoy my family. They basically humble you, because I get people from all over the world traveling to come and see me having cosmetic procedure from all over the United States, and it can get to your head that you're a big shot. But doing so and getting involved with community work, putting your sleeve up and cleaning up the beaches, doing things that you wouldn't ever think a plastic surgeon would do. I do those kind of things. I get involved in that, and that makes me remind me that we're all the same. We're doing different things, and that's what I chose to do. That's my passion. Has nothing to do with the ego.
That makes a lot of sense. Hey, Lee,
Hey,
I don't know
Mark,
if you have any
Mark.
questions and everything.
Real quick
Yeah, I just got
thing.
a question.
Oh.
I'll let Steve go.
Oh, I was just going to say one quick thing, because everybody looks sad right now, but I don't know if everybody noticed that Kevin One is a great guest. Also, he's a plastic surgeon and a sculptor, and we have dropped the pun repeatedly, and nobody has laughed about carving out time, carving out positions. So I just throwing that.
Yeah, I appreciate that. You're right. Lee, go ahead. You had a question?
Yeah, I just want to ask the doctor a question. We talk about it. You talk about improving someone's facial features or what have you. Have you ever had clients where, in your opinion, what they wanted wasn't an improvement, and so you've declined to do what they've asked?
Oh, all the time. So again, I learned a lot. When you're coming out of your residency, you're kind of raw. You don't know the business part of medicine. You don't know people. So as a part of art of medicine, you have to learn people. So when I sit there, start literally the first minute, I will know that a person is a candidate or not. The way they act, the way they ask questions, or the way they desire certain things, and I dig into that. And I will tell them straightforward. I say, I'm sorry, I'm not the surgeon for you. I understand you want to change your facial features to certain things that it doesn't belong to you. And I'm more into natural creation. I make people rejuvenated. I'm not into beautification. I'm more in rejuvenation. And nothing wrong. People have certain things they want to do, but that's not my style. But there are surgeons in California, in LA, that they can change people's face to certain different ways they want. The eyebrows, certain level, eyes change, lips, but that's not my style. And I would say there's nothing wrong with people's perception of themselves. It's not. I'm not judging anybody, but I would let them know that that's not something I'm passionate about to do, and my passion is more of a rejuvenation, not beauty.
So you wouldn't have performed the surgery when Michael Jackson came in and said, "I really like Brooke Shields. I'd like to look like her." That wouldn't have been you that did that surgery.
No, no, that's not my style.
Steve
sound like
Frey,
your style at all.
you for the question.
Yeah, we're going to turn it over to Steve for the closeout and everything. Dr. Sadati, I've thoroughly enjoyed this conversation with you, and I hope that you'll make a return trip and all along those lines, because usually just to put a close-in remark on it, maybe even the elephant in the room kind of thoughts. Usually when you hear about plastic surgery, it is the Hollywood types that are actually involved in that, and they are sometimes you're wondering if they really need the surgery and if the surgery is something that they really need, and sometimes even the product afterwards you wonder if they needed it as well. So I'm glad that you are one of the more ethical plastic surgeons that are out there in that space. So definitely it sounds like you don't do a lot of that unnecessary Hollywood surgery and all along those lines. Before Steve does the closeout, can you
Mark,
quickly
before we
tell
wrap
how
up,
you can be?
Kevin, can you give us your website, your details for those viewers that want to get to you? And I'll also just make note that you do also have a Real Self profile for those people that are familiar with that site. But yeah, could you let us know where people can find you?
Yeah, so my website is drkevinsadati.com, drkevinsadati.com, drkevinsadati.com. And my Instagram, nearly 200,000 followers, is at drkevinsadati. So it's the same thing. And I'm also on LinkedIn and TikTok and so forth. So, but mostly Instagram and website. And I do a lot of educational clips and videos for individuals and tell them what it involves, including not only just the good side, but also recovery, what it takes. I show the real recovery time for individuals so they know we don't do magic here. It's called surgery. There's going to be bruising. There's going to be swelling. There's going to be drain. So I showed every aspect of it so people have more realistic expectations that they see before and after. So, oh my God, it's magic. I go there, come out, and I'm good. No, I show the process in my social media and so forth.
And Dr. Sadati, as the de facto program director here and everything, if we can have access to any of those TikToks, YouTubes, and everything else, I'm sure that I can speak for Nick Palveda and Kim Calhoun. We would love to have segments where we provide that here on Pod TV if you're willing to make those available. So we might be another distribution source for you as well.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate everybody for being here today. And it was a pleasure meeting you all and giving me the opportunity to talk to you, and hope to see you again.
Sounds great. Steve, it's on you for the closeout.
Well, Dr. Sadati, thank you so much. Sorry I got here late. It's been a wonderful show. We'll be getting ready tomorrow to talk about issues we were going to talk about today, but real quickly, Israel passing the controversial law that basically allows the Supreme Court to prohibits the Supreme Court from weighing in on laws that may not be in the best interest of the country, divisive legislation. So that's going to be interesting to see what happens there. I've been reading on the web that President Biden took another fall. Sometimes I don't know whether this is fake news or real news, but more and more concerns coming out about the president's age and whether he will finally decide not to run again. But lots of talk about that. Rumors rumbling about President Jimmy Carter. My wife and I were going to go to a wedding this weekend, and we were notified by the family that that the White House actually has closed the National Cathedral and there's basically told the family that President Carter may not make it through the next few days, and so we pray for the Carter family. But there will be a state funeral, and they're prepared for Washington to be closed. But we haven't heard anything publicly, so I don't know whether the president's family is in private. But apparently, the Biden administration, along with President Joe Biden, will be overseeing state funeral. Apparently, he knew him well when he was a U.S. senator, which is hard to believe. In the 1970s, Joe Biden was a United States senator.
My sources, Steve, have also said that President Carter is not particularly well at the moment. So I've heard that as well from my political
I think
sources.
it should be happening. Should be happening any day now. We will be preparing to honor the great American Jimmy Carter, President James Earl Carter, the 39th president of the United States, who is now 98 years old. And we are grateful for his service to the country. With that being said, we'll talk about Britain, inflation, Europe, Ukraine, all of that tomorrow. Thank you all for being with us, and we're back tomorrow for another edition of World Edition. Thank you.
Take care. God bless.